The Helios venture hung silent against the backdrop of unfamiliar stars, its mining arrays still folded against its hull like sleeping wings. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the bridge's observation window, her calloused hands clasped behind her back as she studied the alien vessel that had dropped out of faster-than-light travel less than an hour ago. The ship's design was unlike anything in human databases, organic curves and crystalline structures that seemed to flow into each other without seams or joints. Life support readings are all over the place, reported Dr. Marcus Webb from his science station. The older man's dark fingers danced across holographic displays as he analyzed the incoming data. Their atmosphere is venting from multiple points. Whatever hit them hard. Sarah nodded slowly, her mind already calculating risks and possibilities. Humanity had only achieved faster-than-light travel 15 years ago, and first contact protocols were still more theoretical than practical. But a distress signal was a distress signal, no matter who sent it. "Any response to our hails?" she asked Communications Officer Yuki Tanaka. "None, Captain. But I'm picking up automated emergency beacons. The universal mathematical sequences match what sinolinguistics predicted advanced species might use." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Humanity had spent centuries hoping they weren't alone in the universe, preparing for this moment. Now here they were, about to make first contact because of a broken-down ship in the middle of nowhere. It seemed oddly appropriate. "Prep the rescue shuttle," she ordered. "Dr. Webb, you're with me. Yuki, you have the bridge. If anything looks hostile, jump to the emergency coordinates immediately." The shuttle bay was already bustling with activity when Sarah and Marcus arrived. The rescue team, consisting of engineer Carlos Rodriguez and medical officer Dr. Hannah Williams, had already suited up in their environmental suits. The thick armor and reinforced joints made them look bulky, but Sarah knew from experience they were surprisingly comfortable, designed to protect against everything from vacuum to extreme pressures. "Remember," Sarah briefed as they checked each other's seals, "we have no idea what we're walking into. Standard rescue protocols, but stay alert. Their atmosphere is primarily chlorine-based, so even a small suit breach could be fatal." The journey across the void between ships took only minutes, but they felt like hours. As they drew closer, the damage to the alien vessel became more apparent. What they had initially thought were decorative crystalline structures were actually massive greenhouse chambers, now cracked and leaking atmosphere. "Impact patterns suggest micrometeoroid damage," Carlos observed, his voice tight with professional interest. "Their shields must have failed." The docking procedure was surprisingly straightforward. Universal physics meant some solutions were truly universal. They found an airlock that matched their shuttle's emergency docking collar close enough for the automated systems to adapt. Inside, the alien ship was a maze of curved corridors that seemed to have been grown rather than built. The emergency lighting cast everything in a pale blue glow that made the surfaces appear to ripple and move. They found the first alien 10 meters from the airlock, a tall, willowy being with iridescent scales and multiple pairs of delicate manipulator limbs. It was clearly dead, its body contorted in what Sarah hoped wasn't a position of pain. "Multiple fractures," Hannah reported after a quick scan. The sudden pressure loss must have caught them completely off guard. They found survivors in what appeared to be a sealed research lab. 6 aliens, their bodies seemingly composed of the same crystalline material as their ship, huddled around a makeshift atmospheric scrubber. Their movements were sluggish, and Sarah's suit's sensors indicated the air was growing dangerously thin. First contact consisted of Sarah pointing to their shuttle, then to the aliens, and making the walking motion with her fingers. The aliens' response was immediate. They understood the concept of rescue, at least. It wasn't until they were safely aboard the Helios venture, the aliens secured in a hastily modified cargo bay, filled with their preferred atmosphere, that Sarah realized the magnitude of what had just happened. Humanity had made first contact, and their first act had been one of rescue and aid. The aliens, once recovered enough to communicate through a hastily configured translation matrix, identified themselves as the Vira, a species of scientists and explorers. They had been studying stellar phenomena when their ship shields failed, leaving them stranded. "We are in your debt," the lead scientist, who called herself Echo of Distant Light, told Sarah through the translator. "Though we admit some confusion, our sensors indicate your species originates from what we would classify as a death world. The pressure, the gravity, the atmospheric composition. By our standards, your planet should be impossible to evolve sentient life." Sarah looked at her crew, then back at the alien scientist. "We call it Earth," she said simply. "And we found that impossible is often just another word for hasn't been done yet." Echo of Distant Light made a gesture that the translator interpreted as thoughtful concern. "Perhaps," she said, "we have much to learn from each other." As Sarah left the cargo bay, she couldn't help but wonder what other impossibilities awaited humanity among the stars. They had passed their first test, proving they could be more than the savage Deathworlders the Vira clearly feared them to be. But Sarah suspected that was only the beginning of a much longer story. The next 48 hours aboard the Helios venture proved that first contact situations rarely followed protocol. Sarah found herself juggling the demands of both her regular mining operations and their unexpected guests, who seemed simultaneously fascinated and terrified by every aspect of human existence. "Your skeletal structure is reinforced with calcium deposits," Echo of Distant Light observed through the translator as she watched Dr. Williams treating a minor cut on Engineer Rodriguez's hand. "And your skin, it repairs itself without crystallization." "Just basic human biology," Hannah replied, finishing the dermal seal. "Though I admit, your crystalline healing process is fascinating. The way you incorporate minerals directly into your cellular structure is remarkable." The Vira scientist drew back slightly, her iridescent scales shifting to a deeper blue. "You speak of biology, but your species defies biological norms. Your muscles shouldn't be capable of functioning under such gravity. Your neural pathways shouldn't be able to process information so quickly. Even now, you're standing in what should be crushing atmospheric pressure without any visible strain." Sarah, who had been quietly observing the exchange, stepped forward. "Dr. Webb has a theory about that, actually. He's been analyzing the data you shared about other known species." Marcus looked up from his tablet, his eyes bright with academic excitement. "The thing is, most spacefaring species evolved on worlds that were, well, gentle. Low gravity, stable climate, minimal environmental pressures. Earth is different. We evolved having to adapt to constant changes, ice ages, shifting continents, varying oxygen levels. Our bodies had to become versatile to survive." The alien scientist's crystalline appendages clinked together in what the crew had learned was a gesture of distress. But such conditions should have prevented technological advancement. The energy requirements alone for basic survival should have made industrial development impossible. Or maybe, Carlos interjected, looking up from the repair work he was doing on the Vira's salvaged equipment, it made it necessary. "We couldn't wait for perfect conditions. We had to create them." The conversation was interrupted by a sudden shift in the ship's gravity field. Sarah was already moving toward the bridge before the alert klaxons began to sound. The rest of the crew followed, their movements sure and steady despite the fluctuating gravity, a fact that didn't escape their alien guests' notice. Multiple ships dropping out of FTL, Yuki reported as Sarah entered the bridge. "Configuration unknown, but their weapon systems are hot." The main view screen showed 3 vessels, their designs as organic as the Vira's ship, but darker, more predatory. Echo of Distant Light's scales paled to an almost transparent white when she saw them. "Nexari raiders," she whispered. "They follow research vessels, waiting for vulnerable moments. They're after our stellar data. And now, they'll want your ship too." Sarah's expression hardened. "Yuki, get me ship-wide. All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill." She turned to Echo of Distant Light. I assume these raiders aren't used to dealing with Deathworlders. The alien scientist's translator crackled as she responded. They prey on research vessels and peaceful traders. Their own world is similar to ours. They've never encountered a species with your capabilities. Good, Sarah said, settling into her command chair as the first enemy shots illuminated the void. Then let's show them why that was a mistake. The Helios Venture might have been a mining vessel, but it was still a human ship, built to withstand the crushing pressures of gas-giant atmospheres and the scouring winds of alien storms. Its crew had drilled for combat scenarios in gravity fields that would have crushed most species to paste. As the raiders closed in, expecting an easy victory against what they assumed was a vulnerable target, Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. The Vira were about to learn another fundamental truth about humans. Sometimes, being from a death world had its advantages. Helm, full power to forward shields, she ordered. Let's show these raiders what happens when you corner a species that evolved to be the apex predator of a world they call impossible. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, their bodies naturally compensating for the evasive maneuvers that would have incapacitated most alien species. They weren't warriors by choice, but their very biology made them more dangerous than any dedicated combat species the raiders had ever encountered. And as the first exchange of fire lit up the darkness of space, Echo of Distant Light began to understand why her people's ancient texts spoke of Deathworlders with such fear and awe. It wasn't their strength that made them dangerous. It was their ability to turn what should have been weaknesses into advantages. The first volley from the Nexari raiders splashed against the Helios Venture's shields in a display that would have been beautiful if it wasn't so deadly. The mining vessel shuddered, but held firm. Shields at 87%. Carlos reported from engineering, his voice steady despite the gravitational fluctuations as the ship maneuvered. Their weapons are designed for research vessels, Captain. They didn't expect military-grade protection on a mining ship. Sarah's hands tightened on her command chair's armrests. That's because they don't understand human safety regulations. When you mine in gas giants that can crush a shuttle like an empty beverage can, you learn to over-engineer everything. The raiders split formation, trying to surround the larger human vessel. Their organic ships moved with a fluid grace that made them difficult targets, but Sarah had grown up playing zero-gravity sports in the asteroid belts of Sol. She understood fluid motion in 3 dimensions at a bone-deep level. Helm, pattern Delta 7, she ordered. Engineering, redirect power from the mining arrays to the lateral shields. Let's show them what a ship built for diving into stellar atmospheres can really do. The Helios Venture moved in ways its design shouldn't have allowed, its reinforced frame groaning as it executed maneuvers that would have torn lesser ships apart. In the modified cargo bay, the Vira scientists watched in fascination as their human rescuers demonstrated why evolution on a high-gravity death world had its advantages. Impossible, one of Echo's colleagues whispered as the ship pulled a tight turn that subjected the crew to forces that would have liquefied most species. Their bodies should be breaking under these stresses. Echo's crystalline structure vibrated with new understanding. They're not just surviving these forces, she realized. They're using them. Watch how they move. They're letting the gravity assist their maneuvers. On the bridge, Dr. Webb's voice cut through the tactical chatter. Captain, I'm detecting power fluctuations in the raiders' shields. Their ship's organic components are struggling to maintain cohesion under these gravitational stresses. Sarah's smile was predatory. They evolved in gentle whirls, remember. Their technology reflects that. Helm, bring us about. Let's see how they handle a little pressure. The Helios Venture's next maneuver brought it dangerously close to one of the raider vessels, its massive bulk creating a localized gravity well that the organic ship couldn't compensate for. The raider's shields flickered and failed as its own mass worked against it. Target locked, Yuki reported, her fingers dancing across her console. Their weapons are offline. The other ships are retreating, Marcus added. They're realizing this isn't the easy prey they thought we'd be. Sarah stood, her stance solid despite the continuing gravitational shifts. Let them run. They'll spread the word about what happens when you attack a human vessel. She turned to Echo of Distant Light, who had insisted on remaining on the bridge to observe. Your people fear Deathworlders because we're strong. But that's not what makes us dangerous. It's because we had to become clever to survive. The alien scientist's scales shifted through several colors before settling on a deep, thoughtful purple. We assumed that evolution on such a hostile world would produce only brutes and monsters. We never considered that it might instead create problem solvers. The universe is rarely simple, Sarah replied, watching as the remaining raiders vanished into FTL. Strength without intelligence is just another environmental pressure to adapt to. Humanity didn't become the apex predator of Earth by being the strongest. We did it by learning to turn every weakness into a strength. The damaged raider vessel hung dead in space, its organic systems trying desperately to heal themselves. Sarah ordered a boarding party prepared, knowing that the ship's databanks might contain valuable intelligence about this sector of space. As she watched her crew prepare for the operation, she reflected on how this simple rescue mission had turned into a first contact situation, and then into humanity's first interstellar combat victory. Echo moved closer to the view screen, her crystalline form catching the light of distant stars. You could have destroyed them, she observed. Your ship's mining lasers are more than powerful enough. Yet you chose to disable rather than destroy. Another lesson we learned on our death world, Sarah replied. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Strength without restraint isn't survival. It's just violence. And humanity has learned there's a difference. As the boarding party prepared to cross to the disabled raider ship, Sarah couldn't help but wonder how this encounter would change the galaxy's perception of humanity. They had proven they could fight, but more importantly, they had proven they could choose not to. The boarding of the disabled Nexari vessel revealed more than just tactical data. As Sarah led her team through the organic corridors, the differences between their species became starkly apparent. Where the human environmental suits were built to withstand crushing pressures and extreme temperatures, the Nexari ship's interior was maintained at precisely controlled levels that would have been considered perfect spring weather on most worlds. Their entire civilization is built around avoiding discomfort, Dr. Webb observed as he studied the ship's environmental controls. They don't adapt to their environment. They force their environment to adapt to them. Hannah's medical scanner hummed as she examined an unconscious Nexari crew member. Their biology reflects it too. Highly specialized organs, perfect for their specific environment, but almost no adaptability. They're like hothouse flowers. The Nexari crew, when they regained consciousness, proved to be as specialized as their ship. They were tall, ethereal beings with translucent skin and elongated limbs, clearly evolved for a low-gravity environment. Their terror at seeing the heavily armored humans was palpable. Please, their captain begged through the hastily adapted translator. We surrender. We had no idea your species was what? Sarah asked, her voice level despite the anger she felt at their earlier attack. Was capable of surviving such conditions, the Nexari finished. The forces your ship generated, they should have killed any living thing. You're not natural. You're monsters. Sarah finished for him. She removed her helmet, causing the Nexari to flinch back. They had expected some horrific visage, not the very human face that gazed back at them. That's the problem with evolving in a perfect world. You never learn that nature doesn't decide what's possible. Adaptation does. Back on the Helios Venture, Echo of Distant Light, and her fellow scientists were reaching similar conclusions as they reviewed the battle data. The forces involved, the speed of human reaction times, the ability to function under stresses that should have been lethal, it all pointed to something they had never considered. We've been looking at this wrong, Echo announced to her colleagues. We classified Earth as a death world because nothing should be able to survive there. But what if that's exactly why humanity succeeded? What if the constant challenge of survival is what made them so adaptable? The evidence was undeniable. The human crew moved through their ship with casual ease, despite gravity fluctuations that would have incapacitated most species. They treated conditions that would be catastrophic for others as minor inconveniences. Even their technology reflected this adaptability. Robust, redundant systems designed to function under almost any conditions. Sarah's return to the Helios venture with the captured Nexari brought this point into sharp focus. The raiders, used to operating in carefully controlled conditions, were visibly struggling with the slightly higher gravity the humans maintained as their normal environment. "Your ship's database confirms our suspicions," Sarah told Echo as they watched the Nexari being escorted to secure quarters. "They've been preying on research vessels throughout this sector, stealing data and technology. They never expected to encounter a species that could fight back effectively." Echo's crystalline structure shimmed with what the humans had learned was excitement, because they, like us, assumed that any species capable of achieving spaceflight must have evolved in conditions similar to our own. The idea that a species could develop advanced technology while fighting against their own world's hostile conditions, it never occurred to us. "That's the thing about humans," Carlos said as he worked on repairing some minor damage from the battle. "We don't just survive adversity. We learn from it. Every problem we solve makes us better at solving the next one." The Nexari captain, watching the humans work, finally spoke up. "We thought we were superior because we had evolved past the need to struggle. But watching your crew, the way you move, the way you think, the way you fight, it's like you're still evolving, still adapting, even now." Sarah considered this. Maybe that's what truly separates us. You reached a point of perfect adaptation and stopped. Humanity never had that luxury. We had to keep adapting, keep changing, keep learning. Every challenge was just another opportunity to grow stronger, smarter, better. Echo moved closer to the observation window, watching the stars. The question now becomes, what does this mean for the galaxy? A species that thrives on challenge, that turns adversity into advantage. You could be either the greatest threat or the greatest ally the galactic community has ever known. Sarah joined her at the window. "That's always been humanity's choice to make. We have the strength to be monsters, yes, but we also have the wisdom to choose not to be." The message from Galactic Central arrived 3 days after the Nexari incident. The massive data packet contained the formal protocols for first contact situations, along with an unexpected addition. An emergency session of the Species Council had been called to discuss the human situation. Sarah stood in her ready room, watching Echo of distant light absorb the news. The crystalline alien's colors had shifted to a deep, worried violet. "This is unprecedented," Echo said. "The Council has never convened an emergency session for a first contact species before. Your encounter with the Nexari has complicated matters." "Because we defended ourselves?" Sarah asked, though she already suspected the answer was more complex. "Because you demonstrated capabilities that frightened them." Echo's form sparkled as she chose her words carefully. "The Council exists to maintain stability among spacefaring species, a species that can casually survive conditions that would kill most Council members. That's destabilizing." The journey to the Council station took 2 weeks at maximum safe speed. During that time, the Helios Venture's crew worked to prepare their case, aided by Echo and her team. The Vera scientists had become passionate advocates for humanity, their initial fear transformed into fascination. The Council station itself was a marvel of engineering. A massive structure built to accommodate dozens of different species, each in their own carefully maintained environmental zones. The human delegation's arrival caused immediate chaos as the station's safety systems registered their dangerous environmental requirements as a potential catastrophic failure. "They built this entire station," Marcus observed as they walked through the corridors, "and never once considered that a species might actually prefer our conditions." The Council chamber was arranged in concentric rings, with each species delegation contained in their own environmental bubble. The human delegation, Sarah, Marcus, and Hannah, along with Echo as their sponsor, stood in the center, where all could see them. The council leader, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline matrix, spoke first. We face an unprecedented situation. Humanity's capabilities exceed our established parameters for safe species interaction. Their physical resilience, combined with their technological advancement, presents a clear danger to galactic stability. Sarah stepped forward. With respect, we don't see it that way. Yes, we evolved on what you call a death world. Yes, we can survive conditions that would be lethal to most species here. But that's not what defines us. Is it not? Challenged a Nexori representative. We have reviewed the incident with our research vessel. Your ship performed maneuvers that should have killed your crew. Your bodies withstood forces that defy biological limits. How can we trust a species with such destructive potential? Because we choose not to destroy, Hannah interjected. We disabled your raiders when we could have destroyed them. We rescued the Vira when we could have ignored their distress call. We're standing here now, arguing for peace, when our capabilities might let us demand recognition. Echo moved to stand beside the humans. Members of the council, I have spent weeks studying these humans. Yes, they are powerful. Yes, they are dangerous. But what makes them truly remarkable is not their strength, it's their restraint. The chamber filled with murmurs as Echo's crystalline form displayed recordings from their time aboard the Helios Venture. Humans carefully handling delicate alien equipment. The crew adapting their behavior to accommodate their physically weaker guests. The careful precision with which they had disabled rather than destroyed the raider vessels. Look at their history, Marcus added, projecting images of Earth's development. We didn't just survive our death world. We learned to protect it. We didn't just develop technology. We learned to use it responsibly. Every challenge we faced taught us not just how to be stronger, but how to be better. Sarah took a deep breath, looking around the chamber. You fear us because we're different, because we can survive what you cannot. But that same harsh evolution that made us strong also taught us the value of cooperation, of protection, of using our strength to defend rather than destroy. The council leader's energy form pulsed thoughtfully. And what guarantee can you offer that humanity will continue to choose restraint over dominance? None, Sarah replied honestly. Just as you can offer no guarantee that your species will always choose wisdom over fear. What we can offer is partnership. Our strength can be your shield. Our adaptability can help solve problems you've never been able to approach. Our very differences can make the galaxy stronger. Silence fell over the chamber. Finally, Echo spoke again. When I first met these humans, I thought them monsters. Now I understand. They are not monsters, but mirrors. They show us not just what we fear, but what we can become. Their harsh world didn't just make them strong. It made them wise enough to know when not to use that strength. The council deliberated for 3 days. In the end, their decision was not just to accept humanity, but to create a new classification, guardian species. Humanity would be allowed to join the galactic community not despite their deathworld origins, but because of them. As the Helios Venture prepared to return home, Echo approached Sarah one last time. You've changed everything, you know. The galaxy will never be the same. Sarah smiled, looking out at the stars that seemed somehow brighter now. That's what evolution is all about, isn't it? Change, adaptation, growth. We're all just children of evolution, trying to learn what we can become. And what do you think humanity will become? Echo asked. Whatever we need to be, Sarah replied. That's the real lesson of Earth. It's not about being the strongest or the most dangerous. It's about being able to change, to adapt, to choose. And now, with the whole galaxy open to us, we have more choices than ever before. The Helios Venture's engines hummed to life, ready to carry its crew back to their deathworld home. But they would return not as feared outsiders, but as respected guardians. They had proven that strength born of adversity could become the foundation of peace, and that the children of evolution could choose to become more than their origins might suggest. It was, Sarah reflected, a pretty good outcome for what had started as a simple mining mission.